everyone cleared out.
He was very cool. He was very old fashioned.
Yes. I would come there and he looked at me and said,
Is she young?
I think she's probably late 40s,
No,
early 50s.
that's good. So she's not gonna give up like the rest of us.
Yeah, is it good?
But she's, I understand one of her, she's good in figuring out what's going on.
She's a good clinician.
Yeah, that's the way I would call it.
Yes, way back.
Thanks, Fred. Ken? Okay, great.
Do you have kids that age too?
Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Planning Board meeting of the Village of Rye Brook. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome again. My name is Rob Goodman. I'm the chair of the Planning Board. Board members attending me tonight are John Gerzan, Scott Mendelson, Amy Schoen. We have two new board members who I will allow to speak for 30 seconds just to introduce themselves that have just joined our board, Ed Teague and Lenny Vaisman. Also in attendance tonight is our liaison from the Board of Trustees,
good one.
David Heiser, who I've decided,
That is a first.
which is the reason why I did it, Dave, because I'm always forgetting you, unfortunately.
I am forgettable.
There you go. There you
No,
go.
you're unforgettable.
All right. Our village attorney, Robert Zitt. Our superintendent of public works is not here, Michael Nowak, but he's here in spirit. And our village planning consultant from Hardesty and Hanover, Sarah Brown. And also our board secretary, Tara Orlando, is obviously in spirit too. She doesn't come to our meetings, but she does everything behind the scene to make sure that these meetings go smoothly, and so we appreciate that. She's also responsible for the minutes. For those interested here and in TV land out there with streaming video, the website of the village has our board minutes, our streaming video for past meetings, our current agenda, and all the documents relating to this meeting. And so you're always welcome to revisit a meeting using streaming video. Our first item is minutes. We do have minutes from last month, which is the May 8th, 2025 minutes. Does anyone have any modifications to be made to the minutes proposals? Okay. Those who weren't here, you can abstain if you weren't here. And then I'll give you your time in the sun. Okay. Can I have a motion, a second, to adopt the May 2025 minutes?
Moved.
Second.
Okay, try that.
I am filling in for Michael tonight,
Okay.
calling the names. Mr. Gerzan,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson?
No, excuse, I wasn't here. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I read the minutes, I liked them.
You enjoyed them?
Oh, well, I got,
You can agree with
so
that.
yes.
Okay. Mr. Mendelson?
Yes.
Mrs. Schoen?
Yes.
Mr. Teague?
Abstain.
Mr. Weissman?
Abstain.
Chairman Goodman?
Yes. Okay. Now, our two new board members are experts in real estate financing.
Just a technicality.
Yes.
If I was excused, we could not have adopted the minutes, right?
I think we could, actually, if
Yeah,
I remember
I think you
correctly.
can too, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need the majority, right? To adopt the minutes.
I don't think you need a quorum to adopt the minutes.
Right.
I remember we went through this like one of our
Yes.
last
You-
meetings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I tend to forget things.
there were only 4 of us, but only 3 actually attended a meeting, and we were told
Okay,
that could
good.
be done,
All
so
right.
here you go.
Thank
Both of these gentlemen will add to the board's expertise in the real estate field and real estate financing. You know, our first item is a project that they would be very, very familiar with. I'm not going to introduce them myself. They can do that themselves. Lenny, why don't you just give us a little background of yourself. If you just
My name is Lenny, and I live in Rybrook. My background is, as you mentioned, Rob, in real estate development specifically. I am not here for my time in the sun, but I am very happy to be here and get some business done together.
and Ed.
My name's Ed Teig. I work in real estate development. Most of our projects are throughout Brooklyn. I also built a house in this town, so excited to be on the board and kind of, see how this sauce is made.
No, that was, when we were talking about it, it's sort of that insight in actually building something in the village. I think it was very eye-opening what the whole process was. So now you come at it from a different, from a different vantage point. Let's see. Our first item today is the 900 King Street matter. So come on up, guys. Oh, yeah. A public hearing was scheduled for today, right? Okay, so we'll open it up. Have a motion, a second to open the public hearing? Thank you, Scott.
Second.
Good evening, Mr. Ch-
Oh, hold on. You need to take roll. Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Grzan,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Mr. Weisman,
Yes.
Mr. Teague,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes. All right.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Sorry about
board. New members, welcome. Look forward to working with you. David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz, pleased to be here tonight, representing Sunrise Senior Living with regard to 900 King Street. I'm going to be particularly brief, Mr. Chairman, because I think we've covered everything previously, and to the extent that you are going to open a public hearing, obviously you will do so, and if we feel the need to respond to anything, we shall. I will simply bring the board up to date. When we were here at the last meeting, you will recall that Mr. Grzan was insisting that we begin the project as soon as possible, and didn't understand why we weren't voting that night, and we reminded the board at that time that you had not yet been authorized by the Board of Trustees, having completed the secret process, to proceed with a vote. I'm pleased to tell you that Tuesday night, the mayor and the Board of Trustees convened a meeting. They did adopt an amended finding statement confirming that there are no significant adverse environmental impacts, and particularly for the new board members, we're really here with tonight a very minor amended site plan application. There were some tweaks to the previously approved design and concept. Sunrise, as a contract vendee, and my client Clyde McGraw, and the rest of our entire development team is here. They decided to make some very minor modifications, reducing the size of the building, not changing any of the numbers in terms of units, modifying some of the parking and garage space in the units. And we have presented to the Board of Trustees, to the Planning Board, and to the Architectural Review Board. We have now completed the secret process. Your board is next in terms of securing a resolution of amended site plan approval. We appreciate the time that we've gotten from the village staff, from Sarah, as well as from Robert and his firm. Jennifer was kind enough to share a draft of the proposed resolution with us, which we did see. We have no objections to the information that is contained within the amended resolution. In effect, and I will let Bob speak for his firm, my understanding is that what staff endeavored to do was simply take the original site plan resolution that you all approved several years ago, readopt it with the modifications that we have presented to the board, that we have discussed with each of the boards. So we are here tonight to listen patiently to any remaining public comments, and look forward to your board proceeding, so that indeed, Mr. Grzan, we can work towards getting a building permit and moving the project forward.
Well, there was a little caveat in addition to what you said, but that's okay. Can we have, since we met last, I saw a letter from Mr. Nestor, there have been few additional pieces of information that were reflected on the drawings. Can somebody go over those for us, please?
Sure. Anthony, you want to talk about whatever, or either Stuart or Anthony, whatever was added to the drawings? I don't know if anything was added.
Nestor, you letter of May 30, I think.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Nestor with the firm of JMC. So good evening, Chairman, members of the board. With regards to those minor changes that you had mentioned in my letter, I just want to get through here. So I'll just go through them quickly. So the first item that was changed is the sidewalk that was shown from our driveway along Arbor Drive up to King Street, which was already designed and is part of an exhibit during the environmental impact statement process on the original approval, but is now been shown on the drawings. So that is a concrete sidewalk. It does require a retaining wall, which has been on the plans, which was before the Architectural Review Board. So that was the first slight adjustment to the plans that was added. The second area was just identifying fence materials throughout the different types of fences on the project. So I know there was some questions with regards to like the chain link fence, for example, as a safety fence on top of the retaining walls. So we went back and we looked at everything, discussed it with Sunrise. So all safety fences on the retaining walls are going to be aluminum picket fence, with the circular things on top. And they're identified on the drawing themselves. And then there's the fence that encloses the AL Garden on the Ring Road side is going to be a 6-foot-high aluminum fence. It's the same type of fence. It's just going to be higher. And then there's the AL Garden that's in the back of the house area. That's going to be an 8-foot-high board-on-board PVC privacy fence in order to provide some, privacy for some of the people, the residents that are out in the garden. The generator and the trash enclosure are going to be 6-foot-high board-on-board fence. And then what we did is, on the details, there's details of each type of fence. It's clearly marked on the drawings. The other thing that was officially added was the on-site fire protection plan. So in working with the Emergency Service Task Force, we have provided roof access to every wing or leg of the main building, which was requested of us, in addition to adding no parking fire lane signs along the access to the cottages on the east-west side of the property. And that's was signed off by the task force itself, and that's included as part of this set. The lighting plan and the photometrics were updated only to change the sconces that were on the building exits to a more architectural type sconce. So no number of lights were added. So it was just more of a clarification on changing the type of fixture that was along the building. And also we modified the symbols so that they're easier to see, because it got kind of messy with all the illumination numbers, and on the plans it got kind of tough to see. So that was a comment that we addressed. And then lastly was there's the existing property identification sign that exists on King Street right before you come to Arbor Drive. And it was discussed, I believe, in the Architectural Review Board that we're just going to replace that sign in kind, per se, with regards to size, with a Sunrise sign that it's equivalent to height and width. And those were the changes that were made to the plan.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this application? Yes, ma'am. No, you have to come up to the podium and speak into the microphone and identify yourself. Give us your name and address.
Yes, I'm Rosemary Schlank from 9 Bayberry Lane, which is in the Arbors. I am speaking tonight as an individual, longtime Arbors homeowner. I have some concerns that really trouble me, and I would like to see them covered in the conditions for the site plan approval. So if you'll just bear with me, I hastily wrote some notes, and I'm going to read from them. It's not that long. Just ask your indulgence on that. The first item is the need for what is called a safe streets study. I would ask that you please add a condition that the applicant will work with the village and the Arbors homeowners on a safe street study that will cover the roads in the Arbors, as well as King Street and nearby intersections. At the moment, I can't spell out exactly what this will involve, but there is funding available, and there are tools available from Westchester County and the U.S. Department of Transportation. They are the experts in this area. The main reason that I am making the request, well, first one is that the initial traffic study for this project indicated that there would be a greater risk of accidents and injuries at some King Street intersections, including one where there was a fatal pedestrian accident in the past. And second, I feel that the residents of the proposed senior living facility deserve a safe place to live, where they can get out and take a walk and feel safe. And the third one is that the change in the use of the land would add to the risks involved in maintaining the roads in the arbors, because the occupants of the facility would be older adults who are more vulnerable to accidents and injuries. It just happens when you get older. I can tell you that. I think a safe street study would help because, as you may know, the village does not provide the usual municipal services for the roads in the arbors. Instead, all the 250 homeowners chip in and we pay for private contractors to do everything from patching potholes to picking up fallen tree branches that people could trip over, to clearing the snow that you can slip on, to complete repaving of the roads when it's necessary in the parking areas that are specified in our PUD site plan. The services that we pay for may not be as good or as timely as the municipal services provided by the village. But, hey, this is the way the PUD was set up years ago. And God forbid, if an accident should occur, whether it involves a resident of the senior living facility or someone else, and there are differences in opinion about whether the services were provided in a proper or timely manner, then that would just lead to complex and very costly legal issues for everyone involved. I just feel it's better to be safe than sorry. So that is the first issue. I confess that I had written to Mr. McGraw about this. I sent him an email and asked if he would be willing to participate in such a study. Do you want me to continue my comments, or can I just stop and ask if they would be willing?
Elaborate. I read your letter, and to be very honest with you, I have no idea what is a safe street study. I really don't know.
I'm sorry, say again. You have no idea what is?
I read your letter, but I was really a bit unsure. What do you mean by a safe street study?
A safe street study? Well, it involves talking to, I'm just paraphrasing, it involves talking to the residents of the community and saying, what is it about this community that makes you feel unsafe? And we might say in the arbor as well, it's the fact that we have no sidewalks. We're always walking in the roadway. And, sometimes there are people walking multiple dogs and we're trying to get down the roadway and cars are coming at us.
How is this applicant would be responsible for that study within the arbors?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Say again.
Why would the applicant be responsible for the study, such a study within the arbors community?
Oh, I'm not saying that he would be responsible for it or that he would pay for it or anything like that. I'm just asking if he would participate in the study.
Well, I mean,
I'd like to
Yeah,
comment
go
on
ahead.
that too. Why, I understand your concern. I can assure you, coming from an administrative position in healthcare facilities, that it's really a clinical issue. It is not a traffic issue. It's not a walking issue. It is up to the staffing of the facility. I guarantee you there's technology now that alerts when a patient or a resident has left the facility. There are insurance concerns, many of these things that the facility itself will have to take into consideration once it's open for business, including accreditation issues and being watched over by a lot of people. And as far as I can see, the study that was done, I believe it was in 21, am I correct on that?
2018.
Was satisfied that there were no traffic concerns other than what the study was studying at the time. But I personally don't consider it it's a concern. It's always a concern. But the facility will be very responsible, as most facilities are. Those kinds of things are so rare if you were to look at a national study of them, any reasonably responsible facility is protecting against those things.
Well, I think there was a letter from the Department of Transportation, I believe, that requested a more recent traffic impact study. They said that the one from 2018 wasn't updated. Has there been an updated traffic?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Mr. Mendelson. As your traffic consultant, we reviewed the original traffic study in 2018. That was based on number of units, numbers of beds. None of that information has changed with the new application. Probably what caused some of the confusion, when the Board of Trustees had to recirculate their intent to be lead agency, they had to circulate to New York State DOT, and they send back an automatic response letter that says a project of this size would need a traffic study. However, it was done in 2018, and our office was not recommending a new one because none of the information had changed.
I could add to that I received an email this afternoon, very late this afternoon, from the state DOT, and I asked them if they had received the study, and the reply was, well, the applicant is claiming that no study is necessary, and, that's all that was said. They didn't say that they had agreed to that.
Well, I mean, I think our consultant indicated that they didn't believe it was necessary. So the applicant has to rely on somebody, and that was the recommendation that was made. You may take issue with that, and there may be, I don't know, a way of changing that, but,
Yeah, that's correct. We're not recommending another study. We don't feel that it's necessary. They do have to get a permit from New York State DOT for the timing of the light. So if the DOT would like additional information at that time, they can certainly recommend it.
okay. What is your second point?
The second point is about overflow parking. I would ask that you add a condition that the applicant will make some parking spaces available for use by the Arbor's homeowners under, to be decided, mutually agreed upon terms. And the reason for that is because the two sections of we've always had that in the past, the two sections of the PUD were initially designed to be complementary. There was a commercial office building with ample parking space and a residential section. Now, it worked out well for traffic because when the office workers were coming into Arbor Drive, we were going out. And when the office workers were leaving for the day, we were coming home. So it was complementary. It worked. As far as the parking is concerned, that was a good solution because this way the arbors could limit the amount of impervious surfaces that we need for good stormwater management. I mean, it's a complicated formula that Michael Nowak knows much better than I, but, we have a detention basin and we can only have so much impervious surfaces that can run into it. So we had to limit our parking spaces, and we have limited parking. And so they used to make some spaces available at 900 King Street for us under terms like, for example, if a townhouse had 3 cars, the third one had to park at 900 King Street.
Do you have a comment?
I think, from my perspective, I think that's just a legal liability issue for the applicant, and I think that goes right, if there is such a thing as a safe street study, that kind of works contrary to it.
Yeah, more cars.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't really see how we could deal with that.
It's also, it's private property.
Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah.
I mean, if that's an accommodation the applicant wants to make, I think that's up to them. I don't think it's appropriate to put it in a
No.
condition
No.
of approval. I think that relates to the relationship between the arbors and the applicant, and presumably there'll be a good neighbor policy, and you'll work things out if problems arise.
I totally agree. It was just a suggestion. My next sentence was maybe there are better solutions, and I'm sure the homeowners would welcome the opportunity to discuss this further.
We just think that it's not appropriate for us to start mandating how a relationship should unfold in this particular circumstance. I think you will work it out. But do you have any additional comments?
Two more. They're brief, I promise.
Okay, sure.
Construction management plan. I think the planning board had requested an updated one. They were just going to change the names on it or something so that we could see the updated construction management plan. That would have been very helpful to those of us who are not attorneys because it was easier to review than the list of conditions, which is kind of long and complicated. If it's not available at that time, I guess I would ask that you please add a condition that the applicant will submit the plan for review by the Arbor's homeowners.
I don't think the applicant has that sort of authority. It goes to the village reviews the construction management plan. I think if you want access to that construction management plan, I think that's something that you can take up with the village.
It's on the website. I think it's on the website.
Right.
Yeah, it's supposed to go to the village building inspector and the village engineer.
Yeah, it ends up being something administered by the village, not, the applicant is subject to that, but I don't think it's really up to the applicant to be sort of the, to publish that to the public. I think that's up to the village, and presumably as residents of the village, there would be access to the construction man. So I would.
It would be a matter of public record that we could request under FOIL.
Well, I mean, you probably don't need a FOIL. You'd probably just ask the village for access to the construction management plan. Unfortunately, Michael isn't here.
It's all on the website.
But he would be someone that
Yeah.
you would confer to if you want the construction management plan available. I don't think it should be something that you have to search for or file for, public
That's-
disclosure.
I believe
maybe.
it's on the village website. All of the documentation from the entire process going way back is all on the website, so you can access it, and you can call Michael Nowak's office, and if you have any questions about it, I guess you can get the answer from them. But I would
Yeah.
certainly look on the website for it.
If I may,
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
check with him and see if he'll do that.
There's a condition in here to defend them that calls for, they are to provide a 2-week look-ahead during construction to you and to the Arbor's HOA. So theoretically, we'd be notified.
He has to
2
come
weeks
up.
ahead of
He
time.
can't.
But
I
yeah,
can't.
yeah,
Part of the condition.
Yeah, hold on. I just want this person to complete their statement, and then you can come up and you can explain. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take up so much time.
No. Finish up.
Really, my interest in the construction management plan was with the noise mitigation. But I can take that up with Mr. Nowak, if that makes more sense.
Yeah.
That sounds
if I
good.
may add, Ms. Schlank, if you read it's been 3-4 years ago that the Board of Trustees approved a resolution. There are a number of specific points in that resolution with regard to the construction management plan. Very detailed, very specific, that I really haven't seen in many of the resolutions in the past. Because we learned from the past approvals where there was a little bit, it's always a communication between the applicant and the neighbors that was always at that issue. And I believe this time around, the board really took it to heart, and they put specific provisions in the resolution, as the gentleman said, 2-week look ahead. They have to give it to the arbors to look at it and review. So you will be briefed, pretty much along the way constantly. Well, you will have
The
the
concern was
opportunity,
more with the wording of the noise monitors. They intended to monitor at the source of the equipment that was making the noise.
Again,
There's a specific, the resolution's over 50 pages, and there's just, it's paragraph 17 deals specifically with the noise monitoring, so it's all there.
Right. And-
Yeah,
and
it's all there.
I
The
think if
point,
you have any questions, again, I think the village is administering the construction. I think if you have any concerns or questions about it, I think you'd contact the village engineer and ask your questions and see how they would implement the construction management plan to address it. But I know noise was a very big issue that was addressed.
I read Ms. Lang's letter, and she's also tying in the airport noise, the airplane noise, and really, that's a separate issue from the construction noise.
it is, but the troublesome factor is when you go over the total noise threshold, not when the noise at the source is over the threshold. You see, we just live in a very noisy community, you know. Not only do we have airplanes flying overhead, but we have loudspeakers from the athletic fields, we have gas-powered.
Yeah, but,
The
you know,
resolution calls for a baseline. I really do think it's all, if you read the resolution, it's all
It's
been.
very, very specific.
Okay, anyway, what is your last point?
The last point is about clean energy. The
About what?
Clean energy.
clean energy. The All-Electric Buildings Act, which I had mentioned in a letter, that takes effect at the end of this year. The way the legislative system works, they have not yet issued the final building code guidance, so it's not clear whether there will be any exceptions made for. They have an exception for a building that's over 10,000 square feet. There's an exception for possibly an exception for if you get your building permit substantially complete by the end of the fiscal year. There's a lot of technicalities,
Yeah, I
but
mean, it sounds like a legal question that.
they're all legal
You know,
questions.
we can have our counsel opine on it, and I'm sure the applicant has their counsel to opine on it as to whether or not, I mean,
I was only going to suggest, because there is so much risk and uncertainty, that perhaps you add a condition saying that, you know, if problems arise with that, compliance issues arise, that you just have to have another amendment to the site plan.
well, I mean, I think that would happen anyway, if there was a,
Would it?
if there was a
You would
legal
know better than I.
problem with implementing a plan, because there's lots of change in the law, it would have to come back here to.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Amend it. I mean, no one is going to allow a plan to be implemented that is in violation of a regulation. And if that were to arise, then the applicant would need to do the amendment and the village would have to approve it. So I think there would be due process in that.
I think in your letter you pointed out that you may lose the parking spaces if there are charging stations for the electric vehicles. Well, if that happens down the road, they cannot install the charging stations and remove the parking spots without getting the approval from, I guess, would be from this board. Yeah.
I guess it would have to go through a process. No one would be able to do it just by fiat. In any case,
So for the spaces that are currently designated as land banked, they would have to file for an amendment to get them out of land banked and into pavable?
Sarah, you have a
Yeah, no,
response to that?
the land bank parking spaces are shown on the site plan, and they're reviewed as though they were constructed. So the stormwater management already takes them into account, et cetera. It's just to try to keep some green space until they're needed.
Right, all right.
They
Okay,
don't require further site plan.
Oh, so they don't require.
all right.
All right, those are my points. Thank you for your patience.
Appreciate you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for providing those points. Sir, come on up and speak to the issue of the construction management plan, if you would, just for the record.
I'm Dan Barnett, president of the Arborist Homeowners Association. Condition 49 does require that the 900 King Street provide 2-week look-ahead as part of the construction management. So that aspect of it, we believe, is in the resolution to defend them. The thing that I was asked to bring up, I didn't bring our lawyer today, was one condition that was not, that was thought was relevant, which was the last condition, condition number 70 on the original 2021 series of conditions that was accepted, but is not appear on this one. I think 3 conditions were removed. This is one of them. And that was the project shall include the installation of exterior security cameras and provide access to the video cameras upon request by the police department. That no longer appears in the certified resolution. It's been removed.
Can you speak up, please? Speak up.
Get rid of this. Condition number 70 was removed, and that was to have exterior cameras and access would be given to the police department upon request. We don't know why that provision was removed from the accepted 2021 resolution that was voted on by the board, but it does not appear, as far as I can see, in the 67, there was 70 of the 67 resolutions that go along with the document that's in front of you today. And so we just had a question on that, and that was the only thing that I, at this point, had to speak.
Yeah, please. Yeah, do you want to address that point?
Very quick, yeah,
Yeah, sure.
absolutely.
Dan, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We saw the resolution very early this morning. It was distributed very late last night. Unaware of, I don't know whether it was simply omitted as a copy and paste from staff. We have no objection. So that didn't come from the applicant. The applicant is, as always, delighted to share any safety, life safety issues with the local police department, anything that will help ensure the safety of our residents, which brings me to very briefly responding to Rosemary, and almost a kind of corollary on the same topic. The one thing that we agree with Rosemary on, the residents absolutely deserve a safe place to live. She said, quote, before Sunrise agreed to take this site and go into contract, they performed a tremendous amount of due diligence, which meant reviewing the studies that this village had gone through over several years throughout the entire process. So that meant examining the traffic study, examining the secret reports, determining the circulation, parking, etc. Once Sunrise, which I think you all know, and maybe the new board members should know, they own and operate over 250 state-of-the-art, highly regarded senior living facilities throughout the United States. So this is not like their first gig. This is something that meant an awful lot about stepping into someone else's previously analyzed project. They reviewed all of that. They reviewed the secret materials. They reviewed and met with the technical advisory safety staff, and ultimately were pleased with what the village had done. And 2 nights ago, the Board of Trustees, as lead agency under SECRA, concluded that there were no additional studies, safe streets studies or otherwise. So we're pleased about that. Number 2, overflow parking. Mr. Chairman, I think you articulated it the best way possible. This is an issue between private parties and neighboring property owners, and I'm hoping that they will both be able to coexist. We've been in touch with Dan. I know Dan is going to be speaking with Clyde again, and on behalf of the HOA, he has spoken and raised certain issues. I hope that when we have visiting day and there may be a lot of extra grandchildren visiting Sunrise, that the arbors will be willing to accommodate, and I'm sure vice versa. However, to ask Sunrise to address and resolve possible parking problems that exist today at the arbors, that's probably not capable of being done. Dan, I appreciate your comment on the CMP, the construction management plan. More importantly, Dan's comment's great, but Condition 18 continues for almost a page and a half in your current resolution. So my client is required, based upon the resolution that's in front of you tonight, and maybe Rosemary didn't have a chance to see this yet, you would be mandating an updated construction management plan. We are quite mindful of that. We know we need to do that. We will be working with the building department, and that's all I have to say.
Are there any other comments from the public relating to this application? Okay, if not, I'd like a motion and a second to close the public hearing.
I move.
Second.
Mr. Gazan?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mendelson?
Yes.
Ms. Schoen?
Yes.
Mr. Teig?
Yes.
Mr. Vaisman?
Yes.
Chairman Goodman?
Yes. Robert, we can include in the resolution the omitted section that you were discussing relating to the police department cameras.
Number 770.
Yeah, we can include that.
All right, so I'm gonna preface this with saying that it's an 18-page resolution.
Yeah. Just,
Yeah.
Yes.
So I will not be reading it in its entirety, lest we be
I have a
here.
question.
Oh
That
gosh.
resolution, in effect, has been already approved by the board.
Correct.
So why is this before the planning board as though we are approving that? That's.
well, because it's an amendment, we
It's
have
a-
that.
But why don't
amendment.
you just, we approve just the amendment and leave that, what was previously approved, leave it alone.
Well, let me get through the resolution before your questions.
No, you
and it
made
might
me
be
read
answered.
18 pages today.
All right.
Trying to save us that right now. Go ahead.
Resolution approving an amended planned unit development site plan for property at 900 King Street. Whereas the Village of Rybrook Planning Board is in receipt of an application for approval of an amended planned unit development plan submitted by Sunrise Senior Living, contract vendee of property located at 900 King Street in the PUD zoning district and designated as parcel ID 129.68 113 on the Town of Rye tax map. Whereas the Village Board of Trustees was the approval authority for the project's original PUD concept plan and PUD site plan in accordance with sections 2091A1 and 257E4B of the Village Code. Whereas on January 26, 2021, the Village Board as lead agency adopted a secret finding statement and approved a PUD concept plan for the project. Whereas by resolution adopted by the Village Board of Trustees on September 14th, 2021, the PUD site plan for the project was approved. Whereas the applicant proposes modifications to the approved PUD site plan, including reduction of building footprints to the IL and AL buildings to reduce coverage, reconfiguration of an entry driveway, porte cochere, reconfiguration of courtyards, addition of balconies and walkout terraces, etc. Whereas the Village Planning Board is the approval authority for such amendments to the PUD site plan pursuant to Chapters 2091A2 and 257E4C, respectively, of the Village Code. Whereas on March 11th, 2025, the Village Board authorized the circulation of its notice of intent to continue in its role as lead agency for the review of the amended project, which is classified as an unlisted action pursuant to SECRA. Whereas on June 10th, 2025, the Village Board, as lead agency, amended its SECRA finding statement in conjunction with the proposed current action. Whereas the Planning Board referred the application to the Westchester County Department of Planning for its Planning Board referral review pursuant to the General Municipal Law and Westchester County Administrative Code. Whereas the county offered comments by way of correspondence dated April 21st, 2025. Whereas the Planning Board referred the application for the amended PUD site plan to the Architectural Review Board for report and recommendation, and the Planning Board is in receipt of a report and recommendation from the Architectural Review Board dated May 5th, 2025. Skipping over a few pages. Whereas on April 10th, 2025, the Planning Board opened a duly noticed public hearing on the amended PUD site plan application, and the public hearing was continued to May 8th, 2025. Whereas on May 8th, 2025, the public hearing on the amended PUD site plan application was adjourned at the request of the applicant to June 12th, 2025. And whereas on June 12th, 2025, the public hearing on the amended site plan application was closed. Whereas the Planning Board has considered the applicable requirements of Chapters 209 and 250 of the Village Code, and the Planning Board has duly considered and weighed all information in its record, balanced the relevant environmental considerations, and is satisfied that there is rational basis in the record for each of its findings and decisions herein. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Board hereby approves the amended PUD site plan consistent with the amended SECRA finding statement, subject to the conditions contained in the written resolution.
And subject to my colleagues' input, I would move that we waive the reading of the conditions,
Please, yes.
unless anyone wants. All right. So I don't know whether we should take a vote on that, but I guess
You don't have to.
we don't have to.
But, yeah.
I think it's unanimous.
And with the exception that the final resolution will contain that
Exactly.
additional
Exactly.
condition.
So can I have a motion to, and a second to adopt the resolution of approval?
Moved.
Second?
Mr. Grzan,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Mr. Teig,
Yes.
Mr. Vaisman,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes. Well done, gentlemen.
Can I ask
Good
my
luck.
question now?
Of course.
Where we go from here? Three
Get-
years?
Tell us what, if it's possible to give us a little sketch of the
So,
future, that would be great.
The best sketch we can give you is 2 weeks from tonight. Our team will be in front of your Architectural Review Board
Okay.
to hopefully conclude the formal review process in connection with these amendments. Once that is addressed and resolved, we will then begin the process. Certainly Perkins Eastman has a lot of work to do to prepare the necessary construction drawings. We will be working with your building department at that point to prepare a complete building permit application. Simultaneously, we will be, my client will be out there securing the necessary financing for the development project to proceed. So we have a lot of work to do. At this point, Sunrise, having spent time, energy, and now quite a bit of money, wants to advance this project as quickly as possible. There are a host of issues that have to be addressed in terms of money, supply chain. I won't say the word tariffs, so we'll see how it all plays out.
Do you foresee a shovel in the ground before you come back to us within a year to ask for an extension?
That's certainly the goal.
Do you foresee, well, it's kind of a silly question at this point, but do you foresee a major delay due to the potential tariffs if they ever could go into existence?
You know, I'm getting that question on virtually every single project we are working on. It's not just Rybrook, it's not just senior living. There is still an awful lot of work going on in the county, as I'm sure you're all aware. And there's a lot of new work that's coming in throughout the county and even in this village probably. So hopefully the answer will be no. I think the bigger challenge, just to give you one notch more information, is it makes the spreadsheets that you gentlemen may well be well aware of a little bit more difficult to balance out correctly. So that's the challenge. The good news is I don't have to worry about that. He does. So we will be doing that over the next several months, is making sure that this project can still pencil out correctly and that the windows and the doors and the terraces and security cameras don't cost more than they should.
How much more work do you have to do with the village before you are actually in a position to get the construction permit?
That's up to Steve Fuse in terms of how much he puts. I mean, we have, you know, one of the preeminent architectural firms, so this is not Perkins Eastman's first job of this nature. So they know what they need to do, but we've got to satisfy your building department on safety and code compliance. So the better that they work together in terms of back and forth and satisfying Steve, the quicker this can go.
I'd be disappointed if I see you in a year and you said we are looking for an extension.
I will be
I can tell you
disappointed.
right now, I would say no.
Well, we don't have to discuss and debate that, but make sure you talk to Bob about some of the case law that's applicable to that. You're not going to say no.
He's shaking his head that I should have not made that
Yeah,
statement.
you probably should, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that even if you're disappointed to see me, you'll listen. I know you will listen.
That we'll never be
It was always a
disappointed.
pleasure to deal with you.
And
That's
likewise,
yes.
we don't want to come back for an extension.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't want to hold you up because I want you to
Get out
do
of
the
here.
project.
Get out of here.
So gentlemen, good luck to you.
Thank you all for your time and your patience in moving us through this amendment process as
Take
efficiently
care, huh?
as possible.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck, guys.
Congratulations.
Kingfield Development. Open up a public.
Good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Chairman and honorable board members. In particular, welcome to the two new,
We'll open up a public hearing because this is scheduled. Have a motion, a second to open the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Mr. Grzan,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Mr. Teig,
Yes.
Mr. Vaisman,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes. All right, sorry about that.
no problem. Good evening, Chairman Goodman and members of the planning board, and in particular, welcome to the two newest members. Like you, I am also a member of a planning board in Harrison, so I get what you're going through. I guess really what I'd like to ask initially is, are there any questions of the two newest members and Mr. Grzan, who were not here last time? From my end of things, I'm ready to start the public hearing and to hear from the public, because as you know, on the record, we had a very, very extensive discussion last month. But I thought just, if the chairman is so inclined, I would be happy to,
I'd be remiss if I did not ask my question, what I asked of myself while I was reading the minutes of the meeting today. How did so much work take place without anybody knowing about it, and all of these patios and areas where?
It's a tough question. We did go over that last time. It should be on the video. I think the issue is that a lot of people just had no idea what was allowed. The builder made promises. People, the initial people who came in did work. They sold to people who really didn't have any understanding of what went on. It's 35 homes. It's not as though, every home did this. It was really just a lot of ignorance on the part of people who just did not know that they were,
And I feel bad for the people now that would abide by the law. They're going to get penalized. People that did it without disregard for the law, they got their big patios and
Well, I think we might be able to show you just as a sample a few pictures. We have a few pictures that we would like to put into the record, and you'll see just how small these violations are. Can I ask for a few pictures, please? And I would ask the indulgence of the board to add these to the record. This will give you an idea of just the size of what we're dealing with.
There's one for each of us?
No, they're all, no, please, take four and pass them along. Mr. Grzan, we mentioned last time we were here that the median expansion was about 9 by 10. So that was really, the median of the 35, and the average was about 10 by 10.
Do you have any pictures of what the ones that weren't expanded look like?
Not of just the regular houses. I mean, you can just sort of picture as if those Xed-in areas, the areas without the X. That would, we do have a few.
Yeah, so this was in the memo, so the top one would be not expanded, but the bottom expanded.
Yeah, actually, that was in the submission to the board.
there are how many units? About 100 some units.
110.
Now,
Many of these really have no place to expand to.
So
That's,
some units, this does not apply to them
it's
at
just
all.
going to be literally not feasible. There are a lot of middle units, middle between three. Our president of
But
our HOA
If we
can.
do go along with this approval,
Yes, Mr. Guzman.
any unit can do expansion,
No.
whatever little space that
No.
they have available.
Well, no.
Because we did hear, to Mr. Gelfar's point, we did hear from some homeowners who are owning of the homes that have been expanded. And some of them have stories that are, sympathetic, right? They bought it that way.
Sure.
They were the second owners, sympathetic. But the main issue is that there's only one pile of gold, right? And 90% or 85% of that pile of gold has already been eaten. So the remaining 15% pile of that gold will now have to be shared amongst the remaining owners, and obviously they won't have the same opportunities of those that have already expanded.
Well, actually, it's about 25% of the pot is still available. Fortunately, it's about 1,200 of 4,800, so there's actually
But what percentage of homes have not expanded?
it would be about 75 of 110, so about,
That's,
all right,
that's
about
what- that-
two-thirds.
I mean, we can go around, let's put it this way, when I was reading Sarah's memo, I thought the last section of her memo really sort of encapsulated the situation she's in. She said, "The original approval resolution noted that the applicant shall cooperate with the village in developing guidelines for future renovations, home expansions, or additions to ensure that no more than the 4,835 square feet of additional impervious surface coverage is added to the site without further review and possible modification of the stormwater management system. We recommend that the applicant provide the board with draft guidelines referenced by the resolution. It is our opinion that additional homeowners will eventually request modifications to their homes, such as expansion of the home, addition of a shed, backup generator or patio, or expansion of an existing driveway, patio, or walkway. The guidelines can map out how the process will be handled." And that's, I think we can spend a lot of hours as a board trying to come up with how to deal with this situation. But it's really not up to us to come up with this situation. As Sarah's, points out, we can talk tonight in general about what people are experiencing or what they think should happen, and board members can be solicited as to maybe ideas, but ultimately, this is gonna have to go back to the HOA. The HOA is gonna have to come up with guidelines and present guidelines to us that will address basically this moral hazard that has been created by the failure to enforce the resolution. And because I just don't feel like our board can, by fiat, say, well, this is how it should be allocated, and people should be tearing this out and putting that in. I'm not taking responsibility for that. And but the HOA, who is charged with the enforcement of this resolution, was. So, I mean, I invite my fellow board members to respond to that, but
Mr.
that's
Chairman,
how
I love your expression, moral hazard. I'm an engineer, and I kind of look at the real hazards. And I think before we do anything on this, my suggestion would be that our building inspector does a review of what was done. I don't want to give an approval of something that's not to the code or that's not safe. And I think if the building inspector was to review based on the design drawings or just, visual inspection, and comes back and, gives us a positive response.
Well, Steve reviewed, he issued stop work orders and
I
violations.
did not see that,
To
Scott, yes.
12 of, I think 12
Yeah,
of the
that's how it
homes.
ended up getting
So I think
enforced.
that's how whether it was a whistleblower or whatever, but I agree with the chairman. I think, look, people should be able to do with what they want with their homes within the rules. And for us to sit here and approve it, and then you have to go back to your community and say, well, yes, it's approved, but only 10% of the homes get the benefit of it. Like, that's not where we should be standing. That's where you guys should be standing.
I think there's, some of this stuff was discussed last time. I do want to make, one nitpicky thing. In terms of the comment from the planner, the actual resolution talked about 11,000 square feet. If you look at the village board's 2017 resolution, it does not talk about 4,800 square feet. If you look at paragraph 2 of that resolution, it talks about an extra 11,000 square feet. But anyway, in terms of what Mr. Grizan is saying, Mr. Fuse is the one who initially issued stop work orders. He did issue violations. We had many discussions with him. This application came about because of our discussions with Mr. Fuse and with Mr. Nowak and with Ms. Gray. So this all started, about a year ago, following Mr. Fuse's issue of violations. As someone indicated, there was either an informant, a whistleblower, whatever term you want to use. And so the idea came up that, look, we have this 2018 resolution that is allowing 4,800 something of impervious square feet is still available. It was still there to be had. And so kind of the obvious solution, which rang a bell, was, well, let's trade the 4,800 square feet that's available in the common area and allocate it, swap it, trade it to the homeowners. And that was a somewhat simple version. It was the simplest possible solution. And you heard people come here last time and say, I don't want violations on my house forever. I own my house. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a voter. And here I am screwed by something that someone else did, and they want their houses legalized. And, they want to ultimately be able to sell them without violations hanging over their head. And the hammer is going to come down on them that they will have to pay to legalize this. They will have to get permits. They will have to pay fines. They will have to present construction drawings. And they will have to do what they have to do to get it legalized. Thereafter, the board will establish a protocol, a mechanism, and a system for what to do with the extra 1,200 square feet. Some people may want to use it, some may not. I can tell you that there has not been an outpouring of interest yet, but perhaps there will be.
So what you are asking of this board,
Yes.
very simply, is it's not how this is going to be divided among the homeowners, but whether we can convert a common impervious surface to
Which specifically said on the
Shall
plat, shall not be used.
Shall, not may.
Shall not
Shall
be
not.
used
Yes.
to expand, I think, patios, or I think
pretty
it was
specific.
very specific. Shall not be done for this specific purpose.
and the board
Approve
Approve
that.
that.
Approve, that's stamped.
And now we
and
are
filed.
going
And
to-
now, but where I take I think the problem is in the definition of homeowners, right? Like, yes, we could simply say it's a minor change the plat to make the impervious, take out the shall, and I guess it's will now, and make it for the homeowners, but it's the definition of homeowners. It's not all of the homeowners, it's only some of the some of the homeowners. And I don't think we should be the ones making that decision, which homeowners.
Well, you're not being asked to decide which homeowners. The homeowners have it's already happened in and of themselves. It's already happened. It's somewhat of a fait accompli.
But it's not.
Well, I remember.
Because if we deny this application, the building department is going to require those homeowners to restore their properties to the original, to the.
Right, and I recall you in particular and other members of the board saying that you did not want homeowners to be in a position of having to go out there with bulldozers and to tear up their patios, which is exactly what you're saying.
No,
It's exactly what you're saying.
It's really not.
Of course it is.
It's
If
really
no
not.
means no, then no means tear the things up and
It's
get rid of them.
really not, but but Mr. Gelfarb, you represent the HOA, and the HOA is comprised of 110 homes, not 30 homes. And what I'm concerned with is the other homes that aren't here today, or maybe aren't here today. And I don't, look, our job is to plan, right? And we're supposed to be the ones looking out for the planning of this. And there was a very specific plan put in place that only a few people broke it, whether it was intentional or not, and they bought their home subsequently. I heard the stories last week. I get it. Like, not everyone did this intentionally. But the other 70 to 80 homeowners now are at a B share level versus their A share neighbor.
Well, there's ways to get around that. For example, this is somewhat hypothetical, but the board could authorize a change, for example, in maintenance payments. The board could require.
Hold on. The board. We don't.
I think he means the HOA.
I'm not the HOA. Sorry, I mean the HOA. I don't mean you guys, you folks. I mean the HOA. Can internally govern itself as it sees fit within the powers that it has under the Declaration of New York State law and village law. There are ways to get around this. Another thing we discussed was that to the extent that there is interest in that other homeowners have an interest in expanding their patios, it's not as though there's no way in the world that the stormwater situation would never allow this. Now, we didn't do any stormwater studies. We didn't do any kind of studies yet, obviously, because we were going to stay within the 4,835 square feet. But if there were to be a real interest among homeowners, then hey, the HOA board could get themselves together, go out, hire the fine engineer who's here, and do some stormwater studies and see what would need to be done to absolutely minimize and have as much mitigation as possible from the impact of, I don't know, having another 100, 200, 500 or whatever square feet of impervious surface. So it's not like, those people are forever, in the vernacular, screwed. That's not the case.
I think, Mr. Chairman, maybe I'm a minority, but I don't see this as the way Scott is. The issue with me is different than how is this divided among the homeowners. It's between us and the homeowners association. They're coming to us or to the village, and they want to change the use of the areas that were previously allocated to be impervious surfaces, which should not be touched. Unfortunately, it has been touched. They want to see if they can correct that. The only way they can correct that is to get the amendment to the site plan.
Right.
All right? How this is going to be later on divided among the property owners, that's something that the homeowners association would deal. Now, I think that before we can,
Well, but the application is to reallocate the impervious surface to address violations.
Right,
And the
like that- yeah,
violations are only with respect.
It's already done.
yeah, but let me finish. For us to be able to approve what has not, forget it, make believe it hasn't been done. All right, they want to change 11,000 square feet of impervious surface to pervious surface. And they're going to use that for patios or driveways or what, step out or whatever it is. Now, we may need definitely look at the site plan. The first question that comes to my mind, what happens to the water drainage,
Which we saw pictures of last week
Yeah.
and didn't look great.
right?
Yeah.
So clearly that somebody's going to have to do a drainage study here.
Well, that's kind of what what we had addressed with Mr. Nowak and Mr. Fusen, they did not think that that was necessary. We obviously went over that
Well,
with
but,
them.
you know,
And,
I beg to differ with them because it coming to the planning board.
okay.
All right, and we, you know, we are gonna vote on it. And to me, you know, it's too early for me to
Because
say.
it was already there. I mean, this impervious space was already allocated. It was perhaps the village thought
But
at the
it's
time
not
they
impervious surface anymore.
No, they were allowing more. The idea was that the village said the homeowners association could have 4,835 square feet more. They never used any of it. It was there to be had under this resolution that we discussed, but they never used it.
Yeah.
It was like an allowance
I
to
have
the
to look at
builder.
the resolution.
Yeah, I mean,
Because you
it's-
said the language was that it shall not be used.
No, it shall not be used for
you
the
please-
purpose.
Patios.
I think the stamp on the plat says the impervious surface shall not be used to expand patios.
Also, another thing to,
But John, to your point, they have a buffer of about 4,500 square feet that they can use without triggering the requirement to reanalyze the stormwater management plan. They have the 4,500 has been built in to the current stormwater management plan, so that's really not
Right.
the issue.
another thing I think we should consider is that we are in no way saying to this board that everyone whose house has an expanded patio is just going to be given a free pass. Quite the contrary. The board has its discretion, it's, as a quote, democratically enacted body, and because its declaration says that they must approve all work. They must approve all work. We can go over what's in the declaration. I would submit to this board that it is very possible that the HOA board will say, well, look, you know, maybe the median is enough for anyone. Maybe the average is enough for anyone. Maybe the top 7, 8, 9, or whatever should cut back on their patios and give some space to someone else. So it's not as though it's frozen in stone that the ones who got there first get the most. That's not the case.
I agree, and I think, but I think the issue presented to us is who is going to mandate that sort of situation? Is it up to this board to come up with the guidelines as to, I mean, your engineer or your engineer identify the amount of space that has been used by all of these homes,
Right.
okay? Some of them are 13.78 square feet, others are, a lot more than that. I mean, you could be, I guess, somewhat arbitrary and take a median and say everyone below this, they get the allocation.
Right, I mean, for example.
But should we be the ones?
I don't think so, no.
Now you're the one advocating for the bulldozing.
No, I'm
Not
not at
us.
all. I'm saying that it is a possibility. To the extent your concern is that the other homeowners will never have a chance, I'm saying no. I would say, for example, you have 4,835 square feet. There's 110 homes. It's just a real estate, the real estate guys here, that there's no way that all these people can do an expansion. Some of these houses are in the middle of threes and whatever. So you got 4,835 divided by 100. Right then and there, that's 48 square feet per head. And a lot of the ones on our chart are under 48. So, if you cut back a few of the biggest, quote, outliers, there'll
Right.
be plenty of room for
Well,
others.
I mean, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
If let's say we approved, all we would be doing is approving the use of the impervious surface buffer to homeowners,
To the HOA.
to the HOA, to the HOA.
Right. Oh, to the HOA,
And
yes.
then, but the HOA would then be responsible for, well, how is this going to be allocated?
Yes, Mr.
And
Chairman.
then the homeowners association, presumably with the interest of its own members, would come up with a way of allocating it that would be consistent.
That's
with
what
the-
that's the board's job
So
that's the board's job.
but the application, as I understand it, I mean, it may be the way, and I have to look at the actual wording of the application. But I guess what our concern is as a board is that all that allocation is just going to address the illegalities that have been created. that the impervious surface is going to be dedicated to those 30, 35 homes, 40 homes that are in this situation, and that everyone else is basically going to be left, if they wanted to build a patio, to be dealing with a much more limited buffer than the 30 homes that would get the benefit. But, I mean, are you suggesting that that in fact is not going to be the case?
Sure, I'm suggesting that it will ultimately be up to the board of this HOA to decide what to do with those 4,800 square feet. And given that they have the authority to address any kind of improvements, I know I didn't put, I'm sorry, in the record, the declaration, but, I mean, you can call it judicial notice. The declaration for this, HOA is obviously, it's part of the, shall we say, the record. It's part of Rybrook's, Rybrook approved it in approving the site plan. So it would be, paragraph 9.2. A lot owner may not change the exterior appearance of any element of his or her home, nor of any patio, driveway, landscaped area, etc., 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 that is manifestly reserved. And then it says 9.4, the board may grant, withhold, or condition its approval for any alteration that requires its consent as the board sees fit, but is required to act reasonably. So, I think a very fair case can be made that the board is going to have to approve all of these proposed actions.
I mean,
And certainly going forward, there's no question
Well,
they're going to have to approve of it.
I mean, I'm looking at your application, at section, the application for site plan approval. And it says, the nature of the proposed applicant seeks to amend its site plan to swap or trade 4,835 square feet of impervious surface coverage between the common area of the development and the patios of residential homes. And that's sort of what's triggered us with this, because under the original resolution, you're not really supposed to do that. And the sense that we have gotten is that that impervious surface swap is intended to basically legalize what is now illegal. But if what you're saying is that the swap is simply to give the HOA the discretion to use that impervious surface to do whatever the heck it wants, and presumably it's going to be dealing with these illegal patios and illegal expansions, but it's going to have to do it within its own rules and presumably create guidelines that its members are going to be satisfied with. That's sort of what's actually going on here.
I think that's fair. I mean, the village's resolution talked about, patios, decks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But clearly, what we're concerned about is patios, and this board can condition a resolution on its grant of the square footage to patios only. But it doesn't really,
Well, I mean, it's before us, because the only way of making that swap, is to amend it.
If an individual homeowner right now, forget about Kingsfield, wants to change the site plan by installing a patio, for example, they will file a permit, or they will go to our building department, and they will ask for a permit.
Are you talking about someone in Kingfield or someone in Rybrook as a whole?
Rybrook as a whole.
Well, when you say the word site plan, do you mean the site plan for their individual residence?
Yes.
Okay, but these people are obviously under the control, if you will, of a site plan for a
Well, let me finish.
development.
And we, through the building department, there will be a permit will be issued, they will review the drawings, and they will approve that this is being done to the code or structurally sound. If we just give you a blank approval on the 4,800 square feet, and you do whatever you want to do with it, can you, how would you control that what's being done is being done structurally sound, it's safe? You will hold the village harmless if something is not.
Okay, well, what I would say to that, Mr. Grzan, is that the village, in particular Mr. Fuse, has the control over legalizing this. He has said many, we've talked with him, and he's made it very clear that it is up to him if you want to call it retroactively issue the permits. He's the
Doesn't
one.
that go away if we give the approval to what you ask?
No, not at all. No, not at all. No. The homeowners association can say to its resident, just like, goes on in Belfair, the Arbors, or wherever, which, I represent, that you come to your A&G, or you come to your ARB, or whatever you come to, and that body says, okay, you're fine. And generally, this village knows or conditions its own approval on the local A&G or ARB.
For homeowners, they will still have to come to the village and get the.
Yes, because
Get the permit.
they have to get a permit, they have to pay the fines, that's clear, they gotta pay for
They're
what
not,
they did.
they're not gonna be able to get the permit,
Why not?
Why not?
because there's not gonna be enough impervious surface left.
Well,
But-
hold on.
Yeah, but that's where our approval
Look,
comes.
what I've been hung up with is the process of all of this.
Okay.
And to what extent the planning board should be dictating, particularly to an organization that represents residents, what should be done and what shouldn't be done with the land that they have. Now, the application, if you read the application at its narrowest, is asking this board to approve a site plan amendment that would allow a buffer that which previously was not allowed to be used, okay, at the discretion of the HOA. Now, I can get my head around that because that is our narrowest authority to be able to do that. Then the next step is, well, okay, who is going to allocate that buffer? And that just seems to me to be sort of an HOA issue. I'm not sure that it's up to the planning board to require guidelines or not. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, you and I have discussed this to a certain extent, Robert.
Yeah,
Discussed it further.
I mean, look, I don't think that's really this board's responsibility, to put it bluntly.
Right. No,
And
I would also say.
There was a specific prohibition on the plat to
Right,
not
exactly.
do this.
That's
Like,
right.
And I'd like to know why that is. What's the history behind that? Why, do you know why that would even be on the original?
I really don't know.
Hold on.
I have no
But-
idea.
I mean, that's
But
an
I would-
important.
But I have conferred with council concerning that, and it is within our jurisdiction to allow the amendment, despite the original prohibition. That is our purview, that despite the original prohibition, we can take into consideration other factors and say, well, as a board, we are going to allow it nonetheless.
I mean, all these resolutions constantly refer to a prior site. I mean, they
Right,
themselves are
right.
amending site
We're
plans.
not bound to necessarily implement the mandates of a prior resolution. That's the reason why you're coming here, to obtain the authority to change it.
Right, and I would say that when you say, a buffer that was not to be used, the buffer really is there. The buffer was put in the 4,835 square feet. What I say and what I submit that we're doing is assigning that buffer. We're transferring that buffer, and it's within the same, development. It's within the same area. I think, well, I don't know, that perhaps the idea was, well, they'd want to, build a bigger meeting house, or build a playground, or build who knows what, or parking. Parking was a thought. Build more parking spots, but that didn't happen. The place is built. And so those 4,835 square feet are kind of just hanging there in the air, and the desire is to, in short, assign it or transfer.
I think you have a very convincing argument, just to be very clear. And I also agree with you 100% that the question here is whether it's even in our purview to make this change. My question is not whether or not that's the case. My question is, why was that there originally? Shouldn't we all know that?
Right. No.
That seems like a major, gap in all of our knowledge here, excuse me. It's ignorant for us to even have this conversation without knowing why that was there to begin with. Somebody put that there for a reason.
Well, it certainly was shrunk.
came up at the last meeting.
Well, it was certainly shrunk because the prior resolution had a heck of a lot more square feet. The amount has been shrunk. But it almost doesn't matter now, well, why did someone do this 7, 8, 9 years ago? It's what matters is what does the village staff, this board, what do they think is the impact?
Both
of
can be
doing
true.
what we're asking?
Both
Right.
can be true. I
You know.
disagree with you on the first point.
Okay, that's fine. You know, they did allow extra square feet. They said you can't change your patios. They said there's still 4,835 square feet out there, but the 110 people can't expand their patios. The more interesting question, I think, is why did they say you can't touch your patio? That would seem to be a more readily
Green space.
resolvable question, but, you know, nonetheless, we don't really know the answer. Someone thought that, and it was a condition, you know, to let this place be
I
built.
think we owe that person, the respect to find out why that's the case.
I agree with that.
If it can be done, I'm not even sure the Board of Trustees would even know at this stage, or I don't know whether there would be even records.
Yeah, I mean, unless you have some kind of, legislative history, it's sort of like, we're here now, we don't want to be
But
controlled by the dead
if you look at
end.
that development, and I'm a little bit familiar because I was looking at some homes there,
Okay,
clearly, they could use little space to have a little outside patios.
right.
So to me, if this 4,800 is there and it serves zero purpose, it has no impact on the stormwater management.
Right.
But by giving this approval to you, it would kind of enhance the development and would benefit the homeowners who are paying, nice property taxes. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay,
I don't have a problem with
accept that, I accept
What
that.
I have a problem with it, once we give you that approval, not the problem, I need understanding, and I think you kind of, gave me the answer by saying that the individual homeowner will still have to come to the building department, file the permit, prepare the drawings, and get the approval.
Yeah, I mean, that's in my
Yeah. So
application, I said that,
And those people that have already developed that, once they prepare the drawings and they, building inspector may come out and said, you may just have to reduce this by 20%.
That's his prerogative,
That-
or our prerogative.
that's, so I don't have a problem.
That's fine,
I'd
if they
like
say
to
that,
ask-
that's their prerogative,
Rob,
that's the inspector's prerogative.
Bob, is there any legal ramifications to our agreeing to the amendment?
Well, we can take it into executive session if you want. We don't have to do that now.
Yeah, I don't want to address that on the spot, but we're gonna have to, I feel like, keep revisiting this issue in the event there aren't guidelines.
Well, are there any members of the public out there that don't have this patio?
Actually, what?
Well, we have a public hearing,
We
that's-
have a public hearing, so does anyone want to speak to this application? Anybody out there? Yeah, come on up. Speak into the microphone, tell us your name and your address, and give us some insight here.
I'm not sure how much insight I'll provide, but my name is Lynette Zimmerman. I'm a member of the public, and I find this a most interesting proposition to the board and an interesting challenge for the HOA, particularly in view of the original intent of the 4,800 plus square feet. It seems that, whether by ignorance or intent, a number of people in the community, 35 homes to be exact, have taken it upon themselves to extend what was originally provided for them in their patios. The amount is from 10 square feet to 450 square feet, as you saw in the documentation that was presented to you. That's a big difference. And it seems to me that it's kind of understandable that a person could put, a couple of stones for a propane tank or for their grill. But 450 square feet is a big difference. What it appears to me to be in the purview of this board is to decide whether that conversion, that swap, is reasonable from being intended to be used for common space to be intended for the use of individual homeowners. And then it's incumbent on the HOA board, by whatever means they decide, to not allow this egregious difference between utilization of this space if it's granted. And in the letter from, I don't remember the person's name, forgive me, it was cited earlier, where, Mr. Chairman, I think you read, that it was advised that the HOA work with the village in order to establish reasonable guidelines. And whether this board views that as within its purview to advise the HOA to do so, or whether the HOA is left on its own to equalize this, there is, I think, an issue of fairness. There is an issue of intent, because it seems clear to me that there are those who did know what they were doing and others who may not have understood at all what they were doing. There are second homeowners who had no clue, and there was no overhang over the transfer of property when they bought the property, so they didn't know that there was a problem. So I think the HOA has a real challenge here in trying to figure out how to mitigate what has already happened and how to use in an equitable way the 400 or 4,835 square feet if you deem it appropriate to do this conversion.
Well, I think you've encapsulated the issues very well. And
Thank you.
I mean, if I were to divine what a resolution would look like, it would be to approve the use of the buffer, subject with the condition being that the HOA has to come up with fair and reasonable guidelines relating to its allocation. And that would throw it, I mean, I don't mean to kick the can down the road, which is sort
No, I
of what I'm
understand.
doing. But at the same point, an HOA is an organization of homeowners with their procedures. They have voting rights. They have a stake in their community, and I'm in Belfair, so I'm a member of a fairly large organization
Absolutely.
as well. And I think I would be very unhappy if a village organ of government said to my HOA, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you
Right.
have to do this, based on what we think is fair. And that just bothers me.
I understand and agree.
So I think the HOA, if the HOA is run appropriately, the way I would have conceive of it is that this would be something that would be subject to a lot of discussion among HOA members, that there would be proposals circulated as to how to go about this in a fair and reasonable way, and there would be a vote. And the guidelines would actually be, in whatever the procedures are of the HOA to do it, and that there would be guidelines that would be approved. And my view would be if the residents of the HOA agree, far be it from me to say that they're wrong. But, and that's sort of where I'm starting to come out on this. Because even if guidelines were submitted, if guidelines were simply submitted by a small group of people to our board, the response would be Mr. Mendelssohn's response. Well, what about everybody else? And that's something that I think the HOA within its own, pursuing its own procedures would be able to address. And I mean, what do you think of my opinion?
I think that's very reasonable. I would hope that the HOA is approaching this with the intent to be equitable. The challenge that I see go forward, not only in the remediation, but go forward, is how do those HOA guidelines comport with the permitting process within the village? And so I feel that the recommendation that was given becomes even more important when we consider the down the road issues of going back to address those people who have already done something. How is that legalized? How is that permitted? Within what realm of reasonableness? And then the same thing for homeowners who haven't done anything. This has gained a lot of visibility, as the board members can imagine. And homeowners who haven't done anything are going to become more interested in what are their possibilities. So it seems to me that there is an immediate issue with the homeowners association developing reasonable guidelines, and then there's the secondary issue of how do those guidelines match up with the village's intent.
I think where I'm still having problems is the way this got to us, Chairman. Is your plan in a vacuum? If I agree with everyone here, in a vacuum, if it was just simply swapping out for homeowners and letting the HOA decide, of course. Like I think that's a reasonable position. But we got here because there's already properties in violation, right? So we can't take that same approach here. Yes, we could simply just say, hey, but I have the same concern you have, Amy. And I think from a legal perspective.
Yes,
So
that's my concern. It's been my concern from the last
I have real
meeting.
concerns, and I
Right.
would like to speak to council about that.
Sure. Yeah.
Those the homeowner association bylaws as currently written.
I'm not,
Can you, under those bylaws, direct?
I'm not qualified to answer
No, no, but
that.
yeah.
Right.
Council, you can probably
Yeah.
speak to
Can
that.
you direct
Thank you,
one
Bob.
of you homeowners to remove portion of their patio?
Yes.
You can
I would
direct
say,
them.
I would say yes, and I don't think that,
No,
this
no,
issue.
no, no.
Yeah.
In accordance with your bylaws, can you do that?
Under the declaration, yeah, I mean, if something was done, just like in any HOA, I mean, Mr. Chairman is familiar, way back when in Belfair, people were putting up trees. It happens in other HOAs I've represented.
But
People
nothing
just-
happened until our inspector came out and issued a stop work order.
Well, in this case, that's how it happened. In other cases, people knew, neighbors knew that people were putting up grills, people have put up trees. Trees is a big one. That's very common, and the neighbor says, hey, wait a minute. And I've represented HOAs where you gotta bring the hammer down and tell people, well, get those trees out of there. You didn't do it with village permission, or you took down trees impermissibly. That's happened also. I mean, the idea, you are a board that has the authority under the village code to act with respect to site plans. So I don't think it's like, oh my lord, we can't act. Site plans are amended all the time. It's not like, gee, we can't do this.
Mr. Chairman, there is the way I see it, there is a reason for HOA. They pretty much govern their members.
That's right.
And who are we now to interject ourselves in the middle of the
Domestic
Well,
disputes.
all right.
But we are, but play devil's advocate.
Right.
We know of the dispute.
Right,
We're then giving them the ammo
Permission.
for the dispute,
Right.
permission for the dispute, go.
that's right.
Like, I would like to speak to council about that.
Okay.
No,
I mean, the issue, the point, the point that Mr. Mendelson's making, that how did we get here? I mean, if everything was perfect, we wouldn't have a problem, but we kind of went over that a lot the last time. People are unhappy because their houses are in violation, they got stop work orders plastered on their doors. It doesn't help the marketability of a house, it doesn't make banks happy. So saying, well, gee, someone was wrong, why should we help you? It doesn't really resolve the issue.
When somebody comes in and buys the home originally or it's a resale, as part of that contract, are the HOA bylaws become known to the new owner or the existing owner, what you can do, what you cannot do?
Well-
Because I'm almost not buying it that somebody was unaware that they
No,
could do that.
I would say this, Mr. Grzan, I am a lawyer, I know we've got lots of lawyers, we've got real estate developers here, we've got real estate professionals. Someone goes and buys a house, a beautiful house in Kingfield, Belfair, the Arbors, wherever, they hire a lawyer, and the lawyer, works out the transaction and checks the minutes to make sure there's no huge wars going on and that the place isn't in default. I'm not so convinced that people ask, well, can I go ahead and build up a patio? And if there's no violation on the house, the lawyer is not likely to go out with a tape measure and say, gee, I think this patio is too big.
But
And
you
the
know
title
there are
company-
violations.
The title company isn't going to do it either.
Any
buy
lawyer
that.
that
I don't
represents
buy
the
that.
buyer would call to buyer's attention that there are HOA bylaws.
They would.
And they will usually get a copy and make the copy of those bylaws
You're
known to the
subject,
owner.
whether you know it or not, you are subject to the bylaws and you are subject to the declaration. You are subject to those things. But unfortunately, it doesn't really answer the question of, well, should you have known that you bought a house with a patio that had 24 square feet it shouldn't have had?
I don't think anybody here is calling the people that have patios bad homeowner. Like, I get it. Like, we understand. Like, they bought their homes, whether they knew about it or not, whether they built it with it not, completely understood. You know, I could see it being a situation where it just happens. Nobody knew about it. Nobody was trying to get one over on their neighbor. Understood. But, yeah, I think we have.
If you have, as a, Scott, I think what you're trying to say, and I think what's not sitting well here is that you're coming here looking for a solution to an internal dispute. And if the bylaws give you, as a board, the HOA board, the power to have recourse when somebody does commit a foul, why aren't you using that power to fix it?
Well, I would respectfully disagree, because the village has, shall we say, interjected itself into it. The village has called this to everyone's attention.
Well, no,
The
the
village
site
has
plan,
issued-
the site plan specifically says, thou shalt not build your patio.
Right.
So the village didn't do anything.
Well, but the village issued stop work orders, and that's fine. The issue is not whether it should have happened or not. The issue, that happened. The issue then becomes, well, what do we do about it? Yes, the village has obviously the authority to issue stop work orders. Obviously, the village, prior resolutions say what they say. The question is what to do about it. Sure, one issue is to say, all you homeowners are on your own. Go cry to your banks. Go do whatever Mr. Fuse tells you to do. Don't bother me. It ain't my problem. Yes, that's an option. It is. It is an option. It didn't seem like the best option. So another option would be, well, what can we do about this? So we looked at the resolutions and we see, aha, there are 4,835 square feet still
Well, you
out
skipped
there.
over a step. Why didn't the HOA do anything about it before you came here?
Because
Well, no, they couldn't. That's the reason why they're here. If one of their solutions was to.
No, but
My point is that
They
that
can tell
we're.
them all, take it all down.
I'm being told that there's guidelines within the HOA, whatever. I'm being told there's guidelines that a homeowner has to go through, steps the homeowner has to go through in order to make any kind of changes. They didn't.
Correct.
Therefore, why? And that should be the HOA's problem to deal with the homeowners who committed fouls.
I think we're walking into a trap.
Yeah.
I really do.
If they didn't go to, if they didn't go to the HOA, they should have known to go to the HOA to get approval.
I don't think you actually have
Don't
recourse.
just
I don't
go
think the
out
board
and
has
do that
recourse
on
here.
your own.
Let's hear
In
from the
a
president.
community where
my name
there
is
is
Jim
an
Lombardo.
HOA.
Okay, so let's hear from some more members of the public on it. Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Lombardo. I'm the president of the HOA, and I just want to provide a little perspective. So, I probably have the longest tenure on the board. So, when we came on the board, a majority of these patios were done in the dark of night.
Yeah.
They were done prior to a resident board. You had the developer, you had the agent, and you had someone else from the development team. People were doing what they want. It was the Wild West. So it's not as if the resident board, someone came to the resident board and said, we want to expand our patio. That didn't happen. When the resident board was established, one of the first things we did was put in a process for patios because they were coming fast and furious. Because they're like, oh, my neighbor did it, which puts us in a real challenging spot. Because if he did it, why can't I do it?
That's right.
But so
Which is,
why, as a board, if we can say thou you don't build patios here, why can't we just as a board amend the site plan to increase the impervious surface of each
Well, we can't.
to each unit? Like, why? There are other options here, right? Like, there are, and I understand what you're saying. The sponsor probably and the builder probably did it for extra money.
when we did
or
come
what-
in, we actually did put in place a process. You had to put drawings, you had to submit, we had to do something at the board level to say, and we actually have a licensed architect who reviewed it and said, there's nothing wrong with this. He wasn't on the board, but he gave us our opinion. He was nice enough to give opinion. More so than a financial advisor on the board, right? So he's got more expert opinion. In that document, it said
you need to go through the proper channels to build this patio. There was no issues. Where the issue came was one resident was approved. It was a minor adjustment. He didn't do it. He went right back, just did what he wanted. That's when the stop work order came. Because other residents saw his backyard, knew what was approved, and he said, I don't care. And he kept going. That's when we found out about it. It's not what we approved. It's not what was approved. Clearly, he didn't go to this board for approval. It didn't happen. And that's when the stop work order happened. And then it was can of worms. This one's wrong, this one's wrong, this one's wrong. And we identified several patios that were expanded long before a resident board was even there. And that's part of the challenge too.
The one that was approved, was it approved by the village, by the village?
The HOA board had a protocol. That was one of the first things we did, a protocol. In the protocol, it said, you will do what you need to do for building permits, for everything else that needed to be filed. Whether someone did that or not is not, I can't help,
You said
I don't know
that
what to
one
do.
was approved.
I'm sorry?
But who approved that one particular?
He's talking about the big one that just went over.
Correct.
That's what he's asking about.
You're saying the HOA board approved one or more of these, but not
From
the
a, from a,
building
from an HOA board, was it
not
like,
the building inspector.
someone comes in and they wanna put steps in or something like that, that's clearly not gonna be approved from an HOA standpoint. But also, there was documentation in there saying, this is at the board level. This does not preclude you from going through the proper channels to put this patio in. But that doesn't, it almost is a problem because before we even did that, people did it when there was no resident board. Then you got that challenge, so how do you address those? Then how do you address the individuals that bought a home that didn't have anything to do with it? So it is, across the board, it's a challenge. And I understand the challenge that the board is facing to try to figure this out. And I think the one solution was the swap idea.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess my question is that if we approved a swap that gave the HOA, let's say, the discretion to do whatever they would want to do with that, because it's restricted right now, it can't be used, but by amending the site plan, it would now be used. Okay, now you have the authority to use this impervious surface coverage buffer. What's the next step? What's going to happen next? What's the
Absolutely amazing question. Because as our attorney has said, I happen to live in a home that there is no way I could expand. There's nowhere for me to go. So I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying, and I certainly don't know the percentage of those houses, but there are a percentage of houses that really don't have anywhere to go.
Okay.
So you could almost take those off the table, because I might be able to add a quarter of a bluestone, but that's it. And I wouldn't go through the expense of doing that.
Mhm.
So, I would say it's that whole row, and there's several others too that have these. They're just not even.
I mean, we
they're
have our
not there.
engineer, if you want to go through the exercise now, we can go through the other 75, and I'm sure she could do it
Well,
in
she
fairly
can,
short
we don't have to
order.
do it, but
Yeah.
if she were to present to us of those units that are they did a great job in identifying those units that have the issue with them. But among those that do not, it would be interesting to know how many of them really can expand or
Well,
not.
I want to be careful too in saying that, hell, in the dead of night, I suppose I could go out probably 10 square feet.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
do you know what I'm saying? Like, but I'm not
You're right. It's
tapping
impossible
into
to
that.
really know.
What is it? Extra 1,200 feet?
Yeah.
Something like that?
No, but anyway, to get back to the response to my question, procedurally, I mean, what's going to happen? What's going to happen with the HOA? Now you have the authority to allocate this stuff. What happens next? What process do you have to
Well,
deal
with the existing, it seems we've already pretty much said you've got to go through the proper channels. We've said that in the documents that we prepared internally as a protocol.
But that's our problem, is when you say you gotta go through the proper channels, if we approve it, right?
You're approving, you're
You
doing
have
it.
impervious surface that's already built. If you're the first in line at the building department and you get that legalized, you're
I get it.
No, I would not say that. No, first in line, no, I would say on the contrary. The HOA has a duty and an obligation to set up a protocol for allowing, quote, construction, for allowing work on the exterior of houses, because it has to authorize almost any work on a house, because this, like any other, like other developments, you want a lot of uniformity and a lot of consistency.
But some of them have already been approved.
No, well,
From an HOA standpoint, it didn't alleviate the process.
I think I would say this, you could ask your lawyer, okay? I would go to your lawyer for this one, but, I'm a lawyer too, and I would venture to say, some of those approvals would be of questionable perhaps validity, given that you're approving something that was not, quote, approvable under then extant village law.
Now, everybody keeps referring to a proper channel.
Yeah.
I have been on this board for a while now, and dealing with HOA, the proper channel is the homeowner wants to make some changes, site plan, patio, whatever it is. They go to your board, they secure a permission from your board that you have no objections. In an effect, once they do that, they prepare the drawings, and they come to the village, they submit the drawings, and village reviews the drawings, we have a public hearing, and we approve that, or disapprove that, or we make changes. That's the proper channel. Now, we could apply that same proper channel in your situation. I still go back, 4,800 square feet could be allocated for expansion by the homeowners, and each individual homeowners would come to the board with your blessing, with the drawings, and we could look at it and decide whether, yes, maybe 20 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, or no.
Actually,
That's a proper channel.
You've made one very interesting point, Mr. Grzan. You've just mentioned something that nobody else thought of. I have to give you credit for this.
That's the first time I got credit.
Well, you deserve a lot of credit for this. It did not occur, I don't think it's occurred to anyone, but I'll only speak for myself, that if this board were to give the 4,800 square feet, which we are asking you to do, and then, for example, the HOA, we'll just make up a number, said to a homeowner X, Y, or Z, that you can now have 60 square feet to do what you want with your patio, is that something that has to come before this board? Or I think the thought was it was just going to go right to Mr. Fuse for a permit. I would think it would go right to Mr. Fuse, but I could be wrong. I mean, your attorney, you guys and women will decide, but I don't think
I
the
think
concept would be
there
to
are
come to the
trigger
planning board.
points where the inspector would send it to the board.
Why would it,
I
I don't think it would fall under our.
I don't, that's the question. Robert, you may have the response to that. With the PUD, with an individual homeowner coming to the planning board, I don't know. How is that,
There's no steep slope.
yeah, I don't think it would come to us.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, the
either.
site plan is of the development as a whole,
Yeah.
right?
It's a different story.
Right, but he just raised a point. It was an interesting concept.
If-
Well, no,
But can I ask this question? If we waive that shall not on the 4,800 square feet,
Yeah.
would our inspector have issued the stop work order?
Probably.
Because there was
would.
no permit
There
issued.
was no permit.
Right.
But if the permit was issued, everything is copacetic, everything is legal.
Why don't we just, instead of saying shall not, each house shall have the ability to have
John,
X
sit
amount of
back.
square feet?
I'm sorry.
I want to hear Scott.
Well, I mean, but it begs the question, what the framework is for allocating that impervious.
Framework really comes within, ultimately, and I think we may have even raised this the last time we were here, the business judgment rule. We have a democratically elected board. We have a board that has to act within the law, within village law, New York state law, et cetera. It can be overthrown by the homeowners if they're not happy. It's really their job to create a structure like any other board.
Look, that's what I'm inclined to think about.
It's their job.
Because I think that our authority only goes so far. I mean, all we can do, I mean, this is just my opinion.
Except we know that there's a problem.
No, but by approving a site plan amendment does not preclude or exculpate the homeowners from having to apply for a building permit and everything else.
So can we specifically put in the resolution something that the planning board is not, something about we're not saying okay to what's currently existing, and we're not instructing the building inspector that nothing we're doing here today should give permit first to those that are already built, that we have no say over how much each homeowner is
let's
getting?
put it this way, it's really, as I see it, it's really the HOA's problem and the homeowner's problem, because the homeowner cannot get anything legalized if there's a violation of the impervious surface coverage requirement. And it's the HOA that holds the ability to make the allocation. Presumably the HOA, being a well-run democratic organization, are going to come up with guidelines that their constituents agree with as to how that impervious surface is.
And I would venture to say it's a lot better run and more democratic than it was when it was a sponsor board, when most of this fiasco occurred. Because the sponsor board, as we heard the last time, wasn't terribly concerned.
Can we say
I
what's
still
done is...
have a problem with agreeing to an amendment that is then going to allow a democratically elected organization to allocate or decide among 110 homeowners the equity of distributing additional property ownership when it was not supposed to be done to begin with at the very outset. I can't wrap my head around that. There is something legally bothering me about that.
Oh, okay.
Can we say what's done is done, and they can get that amount of square feet, but they can't get the additional amount of the 4,800 to build additional?
Right, but the problem is gonna be.
Well, that would be even more unfair. Well, first of all, that would be even more unfair. in a way.
Yeah,
I mean,
Because you
I
still
mean,
have
then-
the
I
other
mean, you have it.
homeowners that.
Right, but the other homeowners should have bought knowing that they can't ever expand their patio.
I think simply, on our plat, we had a resolution saying, you shall not do X. They did X, and now we're saying, because you did X, here you go. And I think I'm echoing what Amy says, I understand we could do it, and I have no problem with them having patios. They should have patios. They look
Right.
beautiful.
Right.
It's just
It's the process. It's the process. And what Lenny said bothers me too, because his point was whether it's applicable today or not, knowing why it was originally put in shall not might be very key and might make the whole thing very simple.
The whole,
If
okay,
you knew
can
it,
I
change it
just
shall
address
not
that?
if you
I'm
don't.
Elizabeth Petrucci, I'm at 3 Honeysuckle Lane. I spoke last time. I hear everything you're saying, and I wish we lived in a perfect world, but we all know we certainly don't, okay? I bought my house 2.5 years ago. We were not the buyers. We took it as it is. I got 68 square feet. I'm on the picture that, is beyond what was allowed under my deck. My understanding was it was done by the builder. The previous owner said, oh, we can put a patio in for you. And they put it in. They expanded my patio for the extra 68 feet because where my home sits on the Kingfield site, I'm at a kind of a bottom of a hill. So they had water problems. So the builder said, we're going to put it out a little more to direct it away from your house, and we don't have any water problems. So this is the type of thing that was done. You say, why was it done? What was done? I spoke to my neighbors. He said, well, same thing. He saw the builder put in mine before they even closed, and he said, can you do it for me? Yes, because as our president said, this is what they wanted money, okay? And they are the ones who were responsible for knowing what was approved. But this happens all the time with builders. I don't have to tell you, people sit here every night and have to listen to all the violations that builders do. And then, we homeowners are kind of left holding the bag. But we need to get this resolved at Kingfield because, as it's pointed out, I can't transfer my property. I bought my property, and I don't know how I got my property without anything coming up, but it didn't, okay? But if I have to sell my house tomorrow, I'm going to have, difficulty because now we have all this on here. So, it's messy. It's not clean. And I think what our board is trying to do is to, we're not doing anything. We have unused property, and now we're kind of saying we're using it. So, okay, that's fair. We're not doing anything to the village. That doesn't change anything in terms of like runoff and everything else. Yes, we have to figure out within Kingfield how we do this, how it's fair. Perhaps what we need to really do is go back, as our president pointed out. If you really, as I said, I kind of urge you to come the last time and look at Kingfield, the way we're laid out. If you look at the map, the vast majority of people that have put in extra patios were all on the perimeter because that's, you have land. Now, yes, that's owned by the HOA. Do other people use it? Absolutely not, because you would be walking, through someone's back house, all right? So yes, that's where the majority of the violations have taken place. So I think if we maybe went back and we looked at how many people of the remaining, 110, minus the 35 could actually move, then maybe that's up to our board to figure out how we're going to do this.
Yeah, well, I'll put the question to you because you're a resident of that development. We can approve the site plan amendment allowing that buffer to be used by the HOA, but, I presume that you would be comfortable having the HOA, you and your colleagues, figure out how to use that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, I'm 68 square feet. I would hope you'd give me the 68 square feet by the size of, I have a house. I don't have a townhouse, I have a house. And that's the other thing. If you look at Kingfield, everyone's paid different prices. There were, I think, 3 different models, I'm going back because I'm trying to look at it. But even within those 3 different models, the prices as they were sold have varied. Like, I don't have anybody behind me. And my lot's worth more money, so patios, things like that. But I'm saying, so where you say there's inequity, well, yeah, there is and there isn't, but it's...
You put your point on something that's very important, which is that the people that are in the development that understand what sort of the parameters of their own properties are in the best situation to come up with a format of figuring out how to use the...
And that's what I'm saying. And our common fees aren't exactly the same because there's all this stuff that comes into this. And that's why I'm saying I think the people to best try to clean up this mess, because that's the only thing I can term it is a mess that really wasn't created by the vast majority of people who live there. Even some people who did it, we had people here last time saying, they came to the board and the board approved it, but who was the board? It wasn't a resident board. So they were allegiant to themselves and not to the village, regulations. So I guess I'm just urging, I think this is a reasonable solution to a messy situation that is never going to be 100%, I think, palatable to anybody. But we do have a very responsible board. They've had meetings. Many of our residents have come. Everyone seems to be, not everyone, but I'd say a lot of people have heard this, think this is a reasonable solution, and really think it's up to our board and, all of us who live there to maybe figure out the equitable distribution, what the board can do to make it so that everybody feels it's equitable. But I think it should be within the homeowners because we understand all the nuances.
I think what we need to do, we cannot make the mess, you call it, bigger than it is.
Exactly.
Now.
It's a mess.
And this is what I wanted to ask Robert. I should know that, but I apologize, I don't. The homeowner association, individual properties, are they subject to the code provisions, or is the site as a whole subject to code provisions?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
And this is very important.
Right. It is.
Because we have to make sure that whatever we approve is consistent with the code. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to transfer your house because there's going to be a violation.
I'll give you, for instance, on my house, like subsequent to the original owners and the builder put in this, but after they closed, they decided to put in a fourth bedroom, and I have and they came through I have a certificate of occupancy
I
for
still
that. So,
maintain-
that was done approved by the homeowner association and by the village.
I still maintain what I said at the beginning that probably makes a lot of sense, at least to me. We transfer the 4,800, and then you answer
Then
my
worry
question.
about it.
Every property is subject to the code, and then the owners would have to, the ones that have done the patios or whatever else they have done, they will have to prepare the drawings. They have to file the drawings with the village, and either inspector, depending what the nature of the change is, either we or most likely in the case of the inspectors, they will review and approve. Now, in a pervious surface, maybe 4,500 or the 450 square feet is way over the limit for that particular lot.
Right, but
So
maybe.
if we approve that,
Right.
now as it is, it's a violation.
Right. It is, but
It's
then
a
maybe
violation.
that's
So you have to correct
let us
that.
figure that out, right?
Still-
I mean, if that's
still-
too
I guess
much.
I'm making
I guess
just by
I'm
making
curious
the-
about
Yeah.
next step, if it is approved, thinking about this, because this has been all consuming. This is like this is 80% of our time spent figuring this out. So on a going forward, I'm trying to figure out who's going to ultimately approve this. So you file the stuff, and you do all the stuff. Is it Fuse, or is it going to be this board? Okay, so I'm just curious, because that home is significantly larger. The footprint is significantly larger, so the patio that's existing has no choice but to get more square footage added on. Just something simple because of the sheer size of it.
It doesn't go like that necessarily. There are other
Right, but
limitations.
that I understand,
They're
but
not a limitation, there are other code provisions that you have to comply with.
I completely understand that. So I guess I'm just trying to think
And in
forward a little
many
bit.
cases, if it's already built, it may have to go to the zoning board and get the approval of the zoning board to leave it as it is.
Well, I mean, I guess the impervious surface issue is just not the only issue
Right.
that a homeowner has to deal with. The swap would address, people couldn't
The
get out of the
impervious, right,
gate
right,
without
right,
the
right,
swap.
right.
But once you have the swap, then that still requires the homeowners to get the building department to legalize what they're doing or change what they're doing or whatever it is, in which case whatever other code provisions would apply would be applied. So if setbacks aren't correct, and it gets confusing because we're dealing with
I
the
understand.
PUD anyway, so it's
Yeah.
not like an independent residential home where you have all these, but there may be within the PUD, like gross metrics and things like that have to be applied, which notwithstanding the swap, an individual homeowner may still have a problem.
Right.
Yeah,
So
we still have a
theoretically,
problem.
you could do all of this. You expanded and you do your metrics and the whole thing, and you could say you're over.
But Lenny's point still resonates with me, and especially with what the homeowner just said. There's water issues there, right? I understand the stormwater management plan. I think we do that all the time. Isn't it entirely possible that there was an engineer who looked at this back in the day and said, hey, we're going to have gravel under those decks because there's a big water issue back there. And the reason why is we know there's pooling, we know that there was tests done in the ground, and we can't have those impervious surface under those decks because of the footings or because of, I'm not an engineer like John, I don't know. But there was a very specific thing put there. Shouldn't we know that it's not?
Yes.
First of all, we're not coming to a determination tonight because there are legal issues that we need counsel to opine on. But the issue that Lenny raised and you raised.
That's the way I feel.
And Amy is concerned about is also worth, investigating to see whether or not there's any legislative history at all that would make some sense, because I think the concern is that if there really was a reason why they didn't want that impervious surface to be used, then the swap is going to upend whatever that intention was, which could be really serious.
I mean, we just heard that one of the reasons
Water.
was for the water.
The whole area is full of water.
Right, but
I'm sorry, but I mean, am I wrong about this? outside of our decks, is that correct?
That's,
legal.
I'm gonna, Steve Hughes seemed to indicate that the deck itself was impervious. So what happened below that, as long as you're in the footprint of the deck, it wasn't an issue.
Yeah,
We'll
well,
completely to Steve
we're-
on that.
yeah, we're
Steve
not-
knows the code on
Yeah,
that.
That's
we're not
fine.
gonna second guess
So
it.
what I'm kind of hearing though is
We are
that,
allowed to have patios, I guess is what I'm saying, is what, we are allowed to have patios, it's just, we're talking about patios that went beyond where they're
Yes.
allowed to be,
Correct.
the impervious surface.
Correct.
Yes.
so it's probably
Well,
pretty,
wait, they're patios that were beyond what appear to have been allowed under the drawings for each individual
Right.
house.
Understood.
There were allowed to be patios, and again, you know, we should emphasize in terms of water and engineering that we discussed this at length with Steve and at length with the village engineer, and there was no concern and no direction that we should now go out and do stormwater studies.
Right.
Had they done that, obviously we would have, and I've made the point repeatedly that if down the road there was a sense that, gee, we would like some other homeowners to be able to expand beyond the 4835, well then, we most likely will have to do stormwater, but, you know, we're not there now.
May I make a suggestion? We've been kicking this around for over an hour.
We're going around in circles now.
We're going in a circle now.
We are.
I don't think we're going to do anything until we answer Ed's question.
Yep.
And somebody should be able to go back 2-3 years, look at the minutes of the meeting, and look at the original resolution where the 4800 came in. And if there was no anything in the study or anything in the past record that would prohibit us from making that change, my recommendation is let's make a swap and proceed from there. Following the code, following the bylaws of the village. That's how I would do it. Yeah. That's one man's
I
voice.
personally don't disagree
Yeah.
with you. Okay,
Can I just
let's,
say one thing? I'm handicapped.
Yeah.
I won't go to the
Oh.
microphone. I live in Kingfield. All I want to clear up is, I lived 50 years in central Pennsylvania. I bought this property, I did all the building, I didn't see anything. I got a call one day from the builder's representative. He said, "Do you want a patio?" I said, I'll take the refrigerator, I'll take the stove. Yeah, I'll take the patio. And that's how it went down. Why didn't he get a permit? Why didn't the builder get a permit? Why didn't I get a CO to move in? All this was illegal. How did you guys let it go by?
I think that's a great point. The certificate of occupancy, how was that issue? That's a great point.
I don't want to,
Yeah.
I don't want to do a permit, I don't want to do all this stuff. I bought the house, the guy came twice for a CO because it failed, it wasn't regarding others, and he approved it.
yeah,
Well, maybe your patio was on the original drawings. No, it was not?
Not based on what I see from the drawings I was given, but I'm just saying the
Yeah, no.
protocol.
no. Look, I'm personally very familiar with what happens with builders, particularly at the outset of projects. In Belfair, among other things, we had people widening their driveways without permission. There's all sorts of junk that goes on at the beginning because the sponsor doesn't care. Only later on does it become an
Why don't
issue.
you go after the builder?
Well, no, that's not for us. It's for
Why-
you.
why-
You guys go after the builder.
The builder is, just for your information, the
Builder is
builder
your-
is in the
the
air.
builder is your problem,
Builder's
not
called
our
a
problem.
single-purpose entity.
But-
It's gone.
Certificate of occupancy, should they have caught the fact that there was a patio and it shouldn't?
I don't have the competence to be able to answer that question. It's a good question, but I can't answer it. Yeah, and our village engineer probably would, is not here tonight. But anyway, let's adjourn this to next month, and we'll wrap it up next month.
Okay.
And in the meantime, we'll address the questions that
So
board
are we
members
keeping the
have.
public hearing open?
We're going to keep the public hearing open.
Okay.
So that if anyone has anything additional to say next week, they can. And-
Okay,
That's the way to
thank you,
go.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
Oh,
and
thank
members.
you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's the best way to go. for now.
Yeah. All right. 47 Hawthorne Avenue. Thank you for your patience, by the way, 47 Hawthorne Avenue. I hope it was interesting anyway.
Good evening.
Maybe not.
You know, if you remember my background
Yes.
from last time,
I've been
I could
watching
tell
the
I could
house.
tell you what to do with it. I've seen it all before,
Ah,
but I can't. I'm not here for that. So good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Greg Verone.
Excuse me.
Hello?
Yeah, we still have a board meeting going on, so please, quiet.
The house is progressing nicely.
Yeah, been watching it every week, week by week. Yeah.
I'm sorry it's taking so long. There was really good reasons for it. But I guess officially for the record, I'm Greg Verone. I'm the owner and general contractor. And that's part of the reason it's taking so long. Being built like nothing else you've ever seen. So, fun project. But thank you for having me back. We're back here tonight because it's coming along, it's progressing, and as I get into the final phases of trying to complete the build, a few things have become obvious that weren't a couple of years ago when I was here last. And so coming in with a request for an amendment, to use someone else's quote or two other applicants' quote, minor amendment. And when I use the word minor, I mean minor. I'm an engineer as well. These are easy things. There's a couple of things. The biggest one is steep slopes, which I had avoided, and we were kind of crammed in when you did the approval a couple of years ago to get everything in that I thought I wanted, including the pool. Which was great, very happy with that. What I didn't spend enough time thinking about was the existing steep slope conditions. There's a bunch of them, and there's one that's now become a sore thumb. It sticks out like a sore thumb, so if you kind of look at the site, there is a big mound of dirt essentially next to where the future pool is going. And you know, now that I'm getting to the point where I'm getting ready to do final cleanup and grading, I said this is a problem because it doesn't allow me to utilize the property, and it actually looks really bad. Everybody that comes by, including village officials, say, what's up with this dirt? Are you gonna, that's a steep slope, can't touch it. Michael, I know he's not here tonight, we had this discussion a few months ago, and he was thinking that perhaps it was minute enough that he could approve it, but it's beyond the dimensions. So I'm looking to essentially regrade that to really, it's an improvement, it's an enhancement, there's no negative issues from the standpoint of water, it doesn't change.
Point to the drawing and say what
Yeah, I'm
you
going to
want.
actually, what I'm going to do is get off the stage and help move this along and let Abigail take you through it. But I just wanted to give a quick overview. There's the steep slopes, there's a fence change, and again, there's rationale behind this. And frankly, it's taken me a while to get to this point. I'm anxious to get the build finished up in the next few months so that I can move in.
Thank you for coming to us when you had a problem. That's something many,
Right,
like, seriously.
Yeah, and frankly, I'm really trying to focus my energy, especially that I'm running the show here, to get everything wrapped up in the next couple months. I have an excavator. I haven't started the utilities yet. Those are going to start very soon. While I have equipment there, I want to do some regrading. I want to change the fence. I'm going to postpone the pool, which I intentionally did not put on the building permit because there's a lot of stuff that has gone into the build, and I wanted to be able to give it my adequate attention. I've been so focused on the structure and getting the house in place that I'm not going to be able to get the pool this season anyway. So that's going to kind of be delayed. And because of that, I wanted to come back with these changes and say, maybe hold off the landscaping. It doesn't make sense to put this in and then wreck it in the process of digging a pool, etc. And some scaling back. So that's kind of the reason I'm here. And again, I do think it's a minor amendment. Hopefully you view it the same way. And Abigail Adams is my landscape architect. I'm going to just let her take you through the plan. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Abigail Adams, registered landscape architect and owner of A2 Land Consulting out of New Fairfield, Connecticut. As Mr. Varone said, we are proposing minor regrading. I kind of want to, if I talk loud, can I step away from the microphone?
To talk loud.
I will talk. Thank you. That's good. Proposing the minor regrading on the south side. As you can see, this is adjacent to the future pool area right here. In the original plans and trying to keep the steep slope, the issue was we would have to have had a few steps off of the patio down to an area, and then to get to any space over here, then you're going back up. And it created a very awkward situation out on the site. As it's being constructed, you can really visualize and see in the letter that we presented or submitted on May 19th, we included some images of the construction so you can kind of see the area that we're talking about. Hopefully everybody was able to review those. So essentially we're looking at regrading approximately 320 square feet of steep slope area. 235 square feet of that is in the 15 to 25% slope, and only 85% of that is in the 25 to 35% area. There is no regrading proposed along or within the SROD vegetated buffer area, which is adjacent to the North Ridge.
That's the Ridge Street area.
Correct, North Ridge. So it's only in the southern area here that it's happening. As you can see from the images, hopefully, it just creates a really awkward space in the central location of the site, and we feel that doing this regrading work will create a much better aesthetic, not only for the homeowner, but actually as you're driving up and down Hawthorne Avenue.
I don't have a survey, so I can't say from here. Is that like a mount on the middle of the site, or does it extend towards on the back, going towards the neighbor's property, going back?
Everything, so we have a little bit of a high point right here, and everything, the majority is sloping.
So it is going up the hill as you go back.
Everything generally still slopes down this way. What happens is you've got a little bit of a valley here.
Yeah.
So when you're on the patio, you would have had to have stepped down.
Yes.
To come back up to this area.
Right.
Now we're trying to pull the 117 contour all the way back. So the patio and this lawn area would be on exactly the same elevation. Actually, I have a 6-inch step down from the patio just because that makes the most sense. But this becomes a nice level, usable area. And then we continue the same slope and grading that was proposed in the original plan for the most part. Let's see. There will be no detrimental impacts to the stormwater system or the natural drainage patterns. In addition, the intent is to utilize material that was being excavated from the installation of the drainage system, so that's where we're getting our material from. And again, just to sum up, we're looking to regrade only 320 square feet of the 2,916 square feet of the steep slope area on the site. As Mr. Varone had mentioned, there's 2 additional minor requests we would like to ask for, and one of that is deferring some of the originally approved landscape plantings. I'm just going to flip that page. I don't know, can you see the plan okay?
Not really, but I told you, just go ahead.
Okay. We had a bunch of landscaping here along this patio wall here. There's a seat wall. We've removed that for the time being because, again, it doesn't make sense to install any of that landscaping if the pool and patio are not constructed. And then there was some additional happening around the pool cabana here. And then we did do a little bit of lightening up in the front just to reduce some of the density and massing of the overall planting plan. However, we are maintaining the same exact aesthetic and four season interest that we had in the original planting plan. And the one other minor change was originally we had this eastern property line fence was down here a little bit more. We're looking to just shift that up closer to the property line in order to protect at least two of the new street trees that we're going to be putting in, because Mr. Varone has noticed as he's out there doing his construction that multiple people walk their dogs and they are peeing all over the yard already. So we want to protect those two trees from that. Hate to end the presentation with that, but that's where we're at.
I still have a,
Yes.
yes, without looking at the survey, I'm having difficulty visualizing.
Sure.
Tell me, the neighbor to you, to the left,
Yeah.
if you, do they have also steep slope in the general area?
That I'm not sure.
Because what I'm, if you cut, that steep slope, would you have to install a retaining wall adjacent to the neighbor?
If we cut here or if we filled here, we'd probably need a retaining wall along here. According to our plan, the topography moves off of the site a little bit to the south. There seems to be a lot more gentle here, and that what happens is the contours come up like this and around, so it's creating a steep slope around this 118, 117 contour that we have. That's what's happening out there right now.
I guess the question is if there's a retaining wall that's created, is that going to create a visual impact on the neighbor?
That's my question too.
I don't know, but we're not proposing a retaining wall.
Okay.
How much of a cut would you do to the slope? And would you gradually,
This is minor. This is the 117 contour.
and what's the highest point on the, going back few contours?
This, we have a little 118 here, just a little bit, tiny
Yeah,
amount.
yeah.
And then that other 118 contour is here, so we're just taking that 117 and we're pulling it back. And then the 116, we're filling here, closer to our pool cabana area. So we're gently filling the slope here, and we're pulling this 1 foot contour back in order to create a flat area.
What's the highest point elevation in that area? What's the highest contour?
This is the 118, but again, the
Go backwards, go backwards.
This way?
Yeah,
We're 116, 118, 17, 16, 15, 14. We're down to 12 here, 112.
so you really have like a mound in the middle,
Yes,
in the middle of the
yes.
property?
That's what you said.
Oh, okay, it's not, I thought it was going all the way back.
No, it's just that central.
It's a
Easy.
steep slope, but it's not that steep.
Minor.
Yeah, Sarah, you've looked at this. What's your opinion?
Yeah, we didn't have any comments. We
Yeah,
felt
no
that it was a
comments.
minor grading.
Right.
And we spoke to Michael about it too, and he felt
Yeah,
similarly.
I gather you
To
did.
me, it's an eyesore.
That's why they're here.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have even bothered.
Yeah.
No, I
I
agree, it needs to
I
be
don't have
done.
any problem, Mr. Chairman.
Needs to be done.
Any questions for the applicant?
Mm-mm.
Well, let's schedule a public hearing and so that you
Yeah.
can get on with your work.
And this fence up front, that's still on your property, right?
Yes.
Yes,
And you are going to have a lower level fence, it's not gonna be high fence, right?
Correct.
I want to, we're 4 or 5
Just
feet?
to
No, I
prevent
can't
the
remember.
dogs from doing their business.
It's a full compliant
I think
fence.
it's, is it 4 feet or something like
I
that?
think it's 4 feet.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, in the front.
Yeah.
Tell me,
Oh, I don't remember the exact number.
your property goes to the Ridge Street on the back,
Yeah.
right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Is anybody ever going to do something to those steep slopes there? What are they?
Talking
You know,
about
it's,
that now.
I walked through there and I'm telling you, it looks awful.
Oh,
Can somebody come back and say, we would like to improve this a little bit?
Maybe you should propose a
The
retaining
roots,
wall.
the roots of those trees are exposed, it just doesn't look nice.
and those trees, I believe, are those are village trees.
I remember when you applied for the permit, but nobody listened to me. I wanted to make as part of the provision that you will do something on the back there and fix that.
I went and trimmed the trees after you made that comment. And actually, the trees that you were referencing, not to throw my neighbor under the bus, they were actually his trees.
Okay.
I actually have a much smaller amount of property on North Ridge.
Then the house to the,
He's
yeah,
the corner in the peninsula.
yeah.
He's got the bulk of the stretch. I think I have like 72 feet or something like that. And it is messy back
For
there.
a scenic overlay district, that sure doesn't look scenic.
I know, I'm definitely gonna improve it because we, to the extent that we're allowed to plant stuff. But my understanding is SROD, there's this vegetative buffer, we wanna preserve it and keep it natural, stay away from it, is my interpretation of your,
That's probably correct.
in the guidelines. So,
Exposed roots and, on a property
no,
that
well, the problem
just don't look
is-
nice.
The problem is that the trees are end of life, some of those
Yes.
trees.
Exactly.
They are.
Exactly.
And you know, if you recall from a couple of years ago, I removed 20 trees.
Yeah.
And I have to replant
A lot.
20. I think it's 20. I don't remember the exact number, but it's
20,
there.
That would be a nice area to plant the
Yeah, but the problem
new
is-
shrubbery, new
Definitely
trees.
have new trees
Here's
going.
the challenge.
Sarah, you listening?
They're not my trees.
Oh, they're not your trees, they
Not
are.
my trees. I actually removed the trees that were hazardous, that were half dead, that had exposed roots, that were leaning. I did that cleanup. It cost me a lot of money to take all those trees out.
Are they on the village property?
They're village
They are
trees.
village property, okay.
Yeah, they're village trees, and some of them are in disrepair.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, I can certainly, I speak with Michael on a fairly regular basis now. He's been out to the property, I can point that out to him that, you know, I think that.
When I see Michael, I think I'm gonna mention to him too.
Yeah, because there's like 3 or 4 large trees.
Yes.
One of them is a very nice walnut tree. It drops walnuts all over the place. It's a nice looking tree. It has some dead branches in it. You know, but I'm keeping a close eye.
Okay.
Anything that I'm responsible for, I will take care of. I don't wanna cross the boundary and manicure or take down village trees. I don't think that's permissible. So, I hear what you're saying though, and I will,
Are you still a planner in Pelham?
I'm still the chairman of the zoning board.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tried to,
When do you have time to do this?
I don't. I don't, to be honest with you. I'm just, you know, we have new board members. We had the person who was next in line to take over for me. We had some rough cases. She actually resigned a couple months ago. She's an attorney. She said, I don't want to take this over. When are you leaving? I'm leaving soon. My house is going to be ready and I'm going to be moving. So notice is given, but they've asked me to stay on as long as possible.
We have empty seats.
Thank you. I feel like-
He needs to be here.
No, I've been doing this for over 24 years, so there's a point where you almost want to, and I was a board president for 2 HOAs for almost 20 years, 2 large HOAs upstate. So I'm very well versed on what's in here tonight. It's a mess.
It's a mess.
And off the record, happy to give you a public opinion. I want to comment on it here.
I'll speak to you outside. I am curious what you
Yeah,
think.
that's fair, yeah.
Okay, I'll
Happy
speak
to-
to you outside.
happy to-
Let's get you on for
Yeah.
next month. You have the resolution?
I do.
Can I ask you a question first?
Sure.
If I so can. Do you guys follow a strict order of first in, first out? Is there any way to flip us? This discussion is not going to finish next month. The prior application, I just.
We can do that.
If you don't mind, because even though it's entertaining and very interesting and complex, and I really mean that, it cost me a lot of money to have my professional here.
Abigail's
That's
fair.
That's
so fair.
I'll try to be kind to Mr. Veron,
No,
for
that,
sure.
that's not a problem. It's within the board's discretion to flip things around and I,
Mr. Verone, entertaining, we're not gonna hold it
I
against you.
actually apologize for that because, I should have done it tonight. I didn't realize that it would take as long as it did. to
You
sort
never
out.
know, you never know.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
totally understood, thank you.
Alright.
go forward.
See you next month.
Okay.
Hold on, we got
You
to
still have to vote for me,
have to
John.
vote.
Just read the
I have two
resolution
rules
of
tonight,
public
let me
hearing.
do-
Yeah.
Poor Sarah.
Whereas the applicant has submitted application for approval of an amended site plan and steep slopes work permit for the construction of a one-story, single-family home on the property located at 47 Hawthorne Avenue. Now therefore be it resolved, the planning board of the Village of Rybrook will hold a public hearing on July 10, 2025 at 6:30 PM. Be it further resolved that the applicant is hereby directed to comply with section 250-40 of the Village Code regarding notification of the public hearing.
Okay, can I have a motion, a second to adopt the resolution
Move.
scheduling the public hearing?
Second,
Okay.
Mr. Grzan?
yes.
Mr. Mendelson?
Yes.
Mrs. Schoen,
Yes.
Mr. Teig,
Yes.
Mr. Baseman,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Hasta luego.
Yes. Motion to adjourn. Second.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Yeah. 2 weeks. Yeah.